Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We just finished up talking about Russell Wilson being released from the Denver Broncos. Now we are going to be talking about the greater picture here of the franchise tag deadline that is today in the NFL. And already as we've started the show, we have some new updates. So I will try and keep you updated on everything that I am aware of at the moment and give maybe a little bit of initial reactions to some of this news. But we will start here talking about Brian Burns, who was franchise tagged by the Carolina Panthers. They did so this morning. This was an expected move. Burns just finished up his 5th season with the Carolina Panthers. They drafted him in the first round of 2019, and Burns has been a very solid player for Carolina. Was a Pro Bowler in back-to-back seasons in 2021 and 2022. Now, this past year, he had a little bit of a down season in most categories, but he is still a very effective player. It is interesting to sort of see how this will all play out because the Panthers and Burns tried to negotiate a contract last offseason, but especially coming off of Nick Bosa's record-breaking deal that he signed with the 49ers, Burns had his sights set on a higher price than the Panthers were willing to pay. Still a little bit rough on details, but Burns was looking for the upper echelon of the $20 million range, 27, 28, 29, whereas the Panthers were off significantly. They were thinking lower 20s, so they didn't end up getting a deal in place. He played out the season on his 5th-year option. And for the Panthers here, during the year, there was a reported trade offer that, again, I know sometimes these rumors can be a little bit, made up a little bit at times. There's always some sort of game that is played, I feel like, between front offices and with player agencies sometimes. You see it a ton in the NBA. NFL maybe not quite as much because I feel like a lot of the time the trade market isn't quite as, cutthroat. But it was reported that the LA Rams offered multiple first-round picks, seemingly 2, for Brian Burns from the Panthers, and they chose to say no, despite the really bad season they were having as a team, and despite Burns not being quite the same level of player that he was the years before. Again, I still don't overreact into thinking that he can't have a bounce back year again and potentially work his way onto an all-pro team. But at this point, coming into the offseason now, especially after rejecting that deal from the Rams, they had pretty much no choice but to franchise tag Burns and make sure that they get something out of him. I feel like this is headed in a direction of making a trade. Now, maybe they can work out a long-term deal, but for them, they have a lot of holes to fill on that roster, and they have a long way to go. I feel like the smarter move for them would be to try and trade Burns and get some sort of draft compensation in return. So again, we will continue to keep that updated with everything there. Burns not necessarily locked into being a Panther for the upcoming season. The Chiefs have officially franchise tagged L'Jarius Sneed. Now, they did so on a non-exclusive tag, which means that he can negotiate with other franchises and potentially work out some sort of a situation where if they were to do a tag in trade, that he could sort of have a more of an idea, I should say, in terms of a contract extension once that trade goes through. Now, the Chiefs have talked about how they would prefer to keep Sneed for the upcoming season. But based off of their offseason needs here, a lot of defenders being upcoming free agents, Chris Jones being the most pressing one, who they have come out. Brett Veach has their general manager and said that Chris Jones is their top priority, that Snead may not be on the roster next year. He, in an interview with Kay Adams a couple weeks ago, said that he doesn't think the Chiefs have the money to pay both him and Chris Jones. So this is at least a temporary solution. He won't be an unrestricted free agent when the free agency period arrives, but another player that may not be with the Chiefs for much longer. Other news that we have had come out this morning includes the Ravens franchise tagging defensive lineman Justin Madubuike. I thought this was a little bit of a no-brainer move for them. I was almost surprised after the Burns and Snead news came out as I was preparing for this show that they hadn't made a move just yet, but they do end up bringing him back. Madubuike was incredible last year. He was an all-pro second-team selection, and for the Ravens here, it feels like they are on the closest. It feels like they're the closest they have been since their Super Bowl years, and you could even make an argument with that Ravens team that won in the 2012 season that they might be even more talented as a whole. Now, of course, that Ravens defense was also tremendous. I definitely don't want to discredit that roster, but I think we can agree that Lamar Jackson is a better talent than Joe Flacco was, despite Joe Flacco putting together one of the most impressive playoff runs of all time that year. And the Ravens felt like they were really in position to finally knock off the Chiefs. They had the best record in the AFC. They had the 1 seed, the home field advantage. The defense, Lamar Jackson, was finally more mature, and he had a true number one receiver in Zay Flowers, and they fall short. But even still, it feels like they are still in that realm of contention, and they have a bunch of free agents themselves on the defensive side. Patrick Queen is a huge need for them at linebacker. I would imagine that he is going to be one of their priorities in this offseason, trying to get a long-term deal done. But Madubuike, for as incredible as he is, and it sounds like they could still end up signing him to a long-term deal, he is almost a little bit more expendable than Patrick Queen is. I think you bring him back, it's going to be over $20 million for the season. But again, their expectations right now are to win, and he was a key piece of that defense last season. Bringing him back was the right decision. Just before the show started, Ian Rappaport tweeted out that the Jaguars are expected to place the franchise tag on defensive end Josh Allen. So as of my knowledge at this moment, that is not official. The tag would be worth $24 million for the upcoming season, and Rappaport added the fact that there is confidence that the Jaguars and Allen can work out a long-term deal. I 100% agree with the Jaguars' strategy on this. If you weren't going to necessarily be able to get the long-term deal done prior to this deadline, you can't let him hit the open market, because I think Allen is one of the most underappreciated elite defenders in the NFL. He is a game wrecker, and I don't think he quite gets the credit for that. He had 17 and a half sacks last season, 46 pressures, 14 QB hurries, and I think that he could also play a role in helping the development of Trayvon Walker, who has had a little bit of a quiet start to his NFL career. He was drafted first overall in the 2022 draft, but he took some strides this upcoming season, and I think that it helps a lot when you have a guy like Josh Allen on the other end, who teams really have to game plan for. And Trayvon Walker, when he was coming into the league, he was seen as a little bit more of, he was the physical athlete. I wouldn't quite call him a project player, but Aiden Hutchinson, who, now looking back at it, it's still early, but Hutchinson seemed like he should have been the number one pick in that draft. But Hutchinson was seen to be a little bit more of an NFL-ready pro type of prospect, whereas Trayvon Walker, the ceiling with him is what made him so interesting for Jacksonville. And I think that bringing Josh Allen back, he is massively important for the team to win on any given game day today. And I think that he could also help make the most out of your first overall draft pick just a couple of years ago as well. Again, I can't say enough positive things about Josh Allen, the player, and I think that despite the disappointing season the Jaguars had last year, missing the playoffs, I'm not out on the team having a bright future. I do really trust the infrastructure that they have. Again, Trevor Lawrence, I sit here and I watch these games on Sundays, and I still feel like a little bit we should be seeing more from him on a game-to-game basis. We know he has his moments, specifically in the fourth quarters. There was the Cowboys game a couple seasons ago. There was, of course, I think it was a Ravens game as well, that he was tremendous in the fourth quarter. And then, obviously, the playoff game against the Chargers, where he was able to really get his act together after a disastrous start to that one from a personal standpoint, and the composure that he showed to be able to stick with it and lead his team to a win was very impressive in my eyes. So Lawrence, again, there's more there, and I feel like as somebody who is rooting for him, I would prefer to see it more often than I do, but at the same time, that doesn't mean you can just abandon the process, because I think that there is definitely something there still with him. A couple other franchise tag decisions that were made as we've been recording this show. Jalen Johnson was just franchise tagged by the Chicago Bears. The defensive back had a very nice season for himself last year, and the Bears are looking to try and make themselves a more competitive team this year. I think that head coach Matt Eberflus, his job is on the line. General manager Ryan Poles, his career with the Bears fully lies on the decision that they make with the number one overall pick this year, and ideally, getting stringing some wins together in a way that they haven't been able to over the course of the past couple seasons. So I think that this deal makes sense. The Patriots placed the transition tag on safety Kyle Duggar. This means that he's a little bit of a restricted free agent. Again, I'm not extremely familiar with the transition tag, but essentially it's a deal that would be the average of the top 10 players at his position, and the Patriots will have the chance to match the salary of any contract that another team offers Kyle Duggar. I'm a big fan of Duggar. I think that he was one of Bill Belichick's few hits in the recent drafts. I think he's a very nice player. I was curious to see how they were going to treat him this offseason, especially given the fact that Jabril Peppers stepped up and made a massive leap in terms of a guy that was once highly touted as a really all-around guy when he played football at Michigan, has bounced around since then, but found a home in New England. And I would prefer, as a Patriots fan, that they keep both Duggar and Jabril Peppers. We will see what Duggar is able to potentially get himself out there in free agency, so we will keep you updated with that nature. Couple Well, we have one specific non-move that is definitely making waves on the internet today, and that is the Giants not using the franchise tag on Saquon Barkley. This isn't really a surprise. It's been talked about for a couple weeks that there were no running backs that were expected to be franchise tagged by their rosters this season, and Barkley goes into unrestricted free agency for the first time of his career, along with a very talented running back free agency class. So it's going to be definitely interesting to see how well he fares along with his peers, because of the fact that there are as many talented guys as there are in the open market this year. And I think that it is definitely could dilute the value of each individual player a little bit. But I think that Barkley and his time with the Giants, it just came to a point where they should be parting ways. Now, I know that Giants fans definitely don't want to see him end up in the jersey of a rival, but that's definitely a real possibility. I think that the Eagles and Cowboys are both going to be looking to add running back talent in the free agency class. So we will see with that. A couple non-franchise tag moves here, but sort of adjacent, is the fact that the Buccaneers and Mike Evans were able to come to a contract agreement. It was worth 2 years, $52 million. Evans went on his Instagram, posted the Wolf of Wall Street, "I'm not leaving" scene. So pretty funny stuff there from him. But it is nice to see a guy who has had tons of success in his first destination, and specifically a non-quarterback, because quarterbacks, the franchise will pretty much do anything a lot of the time to keep them around. But to have a position player like Mike Evans stick around and have this type of longevity in one destination is sort of cool to see, just because of the fact that we get so much movement. And not that movement is a bad thing, but it does make those instances where a player in a franchise sort of sticking together, it makes that a little bit more special. And I mean, good for Mike Evans here, entering his age 31 season, making $26 million a year. I think that is a great payout for him. This does lead to a little bit of an interesting conversation, I should say, about Baker Mayfield and what type of contract he could potentially get from Tampa Bay or elsewhere. That's something that we will definitely be touching on as the week advances. Last couple moves here. The Texans re-signed tight end Dalton Schultz. I didn't actually realize Schultz was on just a 1-year contract with the Texans last year, but he put in a really great season, was a big-time red zone threat for rookie quarterback CJ Stroud, and I think was a very nice safety blanket type of guy for him. He gets a 3-year contract worth $36 million to stay in Houston, and notably, this contract lines up with Stroud entering the final year of his rookie contract, assuming that Houston picks up his 5th-year option. So Schultz is being brought in to continue help the development of CJ Stroud, and then before CJ Stroud gets his big-time payday where he gets his first contract extension, the team and Schultz can reconvene and work out a potential deal or decide that it's time to part ways. So I really like this move from the Texans, making sure that they held on to him. And then final note here, not free agency, but Jason Kelce held a press conference yesterday and announced that he is officially retiring. If you haven't seen the clips, I definitely recommend going to check them out. It was very emotional, very wholesome, and again, not all too much of a surprise. There was a lot of speculation dating back to their playoff loss against the Buccaneers a couple months ago, but he said he wasn't in the right time and place emotionally to officially make that decision. He is officially retired from football, but I would definitely bet that He won't be going anywhere necessarily in the eyes of the National Football League attention. He has built up a really great brand for himself. He is an incredible personality, and whether it's continuing on with his podcast or potentially making his way onto TV, I don't think that this is the last we will see of Jason Kelce. On that note, that is all we have for free agent updates as of this moment. Checking one more time to make sure that there was nothing else. We have some releases and other moves that we will definitely be getting to as the week goes on as well. But these were the big moves of the past 24 hours, at least as of now. So with that, we are going to be taking our second break, and when we come back, we will be talking some NBA and the Milwaukee Bucks. So stick with us. We will be right back.